Reddit, what is your best and that's how we became friends story? Got in a fight with him on the playground in 3rd grade. While waiting outside the principal's office we decided to tell him we were just joking around and the teachers didn't know what they were talking about. He bought it. Best friends for 20 years. We met in grade 9. I thought she was a loser and she thought I was a B. Little did I know, we were both right. Thursdays on CBS. This new kid got on my bus in the 7th grade and sat near me. Not too long after getting settled he just stood up and asked aloud if anyone else plays RuneScape. I responded with yeah, every now and then. For the rest of the ride, he talked about nothing but RuneScape. Over 10 years later and with an ocean between us, he still talks about nothing but that game. My best friend from K8 and I had the same colored backpack. The rest is magical. In elementary school I didn't know how to make friends so I just sorta walked up to a group and followed them every day at recess for a week or two. One day they actually talked to me and that's how we became friends. We were in middle school. She was alone and looking sad in the library, which was where I usually hung out. I sat down next to her and asked her why she was sad. Because I don't have any friends, well, I could be your friend. And she smiled. That was 21 years ago. I was home one day and my mother yelled upstairs to me, "Sock under the bed. Phone for you." So I go downstairs, thinking who the heck would be calling me when most of my friends haven't even gotten off the school bus yet. I answer the phone and I hear a girl voice. "I saw you walking home and I got your number from a mutual friend. Do you want to hang out?" I'm a little sketched but I say sure. I tell my mom I'll be back in an hour because the weird neighbor girl called to hang out. Turned out, she just moved to my hood and saw we rode the same bus. 14 years later, we're still best friends. This guy was hitting on me at the bar. I told him I have a fiance. Then he asked if I could be his wingman and introduce him to this girl. I did and he hooked up with her. We've been friends ever since then. Good friends get their friends laid. She held my hair when I was vomiting in a public restroom during a concert. That's really sweet. We were sitting next to each other in drawing class and about to draw a still life of a generously sized model of a rooster. Being a bit stupid, the best icebreaker I could come up with was "That's a pretty large dong." Somehow, she didn't run away from the sheer atrocity of that sentence, and we became friends. I was 5, she was 3. Her family moved in 2 houses down. She walked over and asked my mom if she could be friends with her kids. 26 years later we're still best friends. He chucked a basketball at my head, so I punched him in the face. We traded Pokemon while our moms tried to deal with our nosebleeds. 1999 was a pretty good year. My child's father used to talk about his friends Oliver and Rain, whom I never met because he lost touch over time. I told him I loved the name Oliver and if we ever had a male child, I wanted to name him that. We did, and now I have a little teen Oliver. Anyway, during a festival miles and miles from home, I hear someone call out to a girl walking by Rain and I stopped her and asked her if she had dated an Oliver once, by chance. She said yes. That was her deceased husband. I told her that she was never going to believe it, but I have a child by that name because of stories I had heard about them. We became very close and she eventually moved to my state, even. We are best friends now, and she is super happy that she gets to see Oliver in another form every day. I asked if I could sit in the seat next to him, you know, making sure nobody was already sitting there. He said no. I did it anyway. Yay, forced friendship. So my friend and I go and sit down at a table in the cafeteria to eat lunch. Some kid from one of his classes comes and sits down next to him and they just start talking. After they talk for a little while with me just sitting there, the kid I don't know looks over at me and asks, "Who the frick are you?" I respond like any person would by saying, "Who the frick am I? Who the frick are you?" And that's how we became friends. Sophomore year of high school, I'm walking to the restroom during class. From behind me I hear, "Hey, are you a Cooper?" Cooper's my last name. I turn and see this girl standing a bit from me. She apologizes and explains that a mutual friend told her to find a Cooper, meaning myself and my sister, and be friends with one, but gave her no description of us. She said that I just looked like a Cooper and we started talking. We've been best friends for over a decade now. First day of kindergarten, she came up to me, we were both crying, and says wanna be best friends, and I said sure. At freshman orientation, she had a small argument with her boyfriend and said we aren't best friends anymore. I piped up I'll be your best friend. 2 months later we end up next door neighbors in the freshman dorm and besties ever since. At a party in college, I was hitting on a guy who turned out to have a girlfriend. She noticed me trying to get his attention and came over to talk to me. I expected to be reamed out, but instead she brought me a drink and we played cards. Her reasoning? If we both like the same guy, we must have other things in common as well. I was living in a student-infested house while attending university. There were 5 students living there and one moved out suddenly. Quell surprise. The rest of us put an ad in a community newspaper, obviously a while ago, that outlined our requirements, which were pretty loose: meatarian, vegetarian, smoker, non-smoker, small pets okay, etc. and ended the ad with no goofs please. She phoned, I answered and we got along and we set up an appointment to see the house and meet the housemates. Great, right? She phones back minutes later and says, I forgot to ask for the address. I guess I flunked the no goof test. We've been best friends for 35 years, and we both managed to graduate, in spite of our mutual stupidity. I was really into this girl that I reconnected with after high school. I found out she had a boyfriend, so I backed off. She texted me asking if I wanted to go to a lacrosse game with her and she assured me that she dumped her boyfriend. She said she would come over around 5 and at 4:45. She said she couldn't make it, but she was sending over her boyfriend. He showed up. I shrugged and headed out with him to the game. We got along so well that he moved in the next week and quickly became great friends. He ended up dumping that girl and met his wife through my other roommate at the time. That guy rocked. Went to score some weed at my friend's house about 12 years ago. Met this girl and we started taking. I mentioned that I was going to the beach, which happened to be where she was from. We hit it off and started emailing each other. We've been married for 4 years and have a wonderful son. Kicker is that later she told me she went to the guy's place for sex and some weed. She went out to dinner with me instead. That is going to be a great How I Met Your Mother father story. I was like 5'6" and walking to another friend's house, whom I'm also still friends with some other kids, when I see a kid playing outside by himself and I said something dumb about his Superman shirt he was wearing. He of course took offense to this, but we all just kept walking. Later that day I'm walking home and have to pass his house and he's outside but we don't speak. This other kid, who's probably like 10-12, I only knew him from seeing him around really, rides his bike up next to me and says, hey, go play with that kid. I don't want to boo. He says he'd kick my butt if I didn't. So I went over and talked to him. We're practically brothers now. The guy whose house I was walking to was the best man at my wedding. AWW. Such a sweet bully. Mine happened back in primary 1, equivalent of first grade. I was sitting beside this dude on the first day of school during assembly, and despite my attempts of being a friendly nice guy, that snobby bastard refused to even acknowledge my presence. 7-year-old was never going to give up this easily. I stood up, went to his mother, whom I recognized earlier, and told her your son wouldn't make friends with me. Seconds later, after a nice talk from that lady to her son, I soon made another new friend in school. If all other ways of making a new friend fail, apply authoritarian methods. I had just moved into a new apartment in Prague for a month-long course. I'm an American. It had been really difficult and a huge weekend-long hassle to find the apartment, so when I got there at 10 AM on a Sunday I was ready to just cry. I get let in by my school-appointed roommate, an Australian Russian, who I've never met, and we quickly get into a conversation about my apartment struggles and her lost luggage struggles. About 30 seconds into this conversation she looks hesitant, then asks do you drink? I give her a confused look. Our third roommate. She doesn't drink. I smiled broadly. I spent all of yesterday at a beer festival. We proceeded to go out for 4 beers at 10:15 AM on a Sunday. It was friendships from first malt. My first day of freshman year high school, I was lost. I saw this senior from my pay class I had already had and asked him for direction by saying MR. Insert name. Where is the band room? He replied, ugh, see that building way over there, that's it. He sent me to the building where the cooking classes were, on the complete other side of campus from the band room. Still great friends to this day. I spit a freestyle in front of a group of kids on my first day of 9th grade. A few days later, this dude challenged me to a rap battle. I destroyed him with one line. We became friends after that and have been best friends for 10 years now. This guy had started at my high school in 10th grade. My junior high was the main feeder and started in 9th. His had one more year in junior high. I somehow avoided even seeing him for a semester. Walk into my trig class for the new semester and he was sitting in my seat. He's Egyptian. Finds it hysterical that he's Egyptian and he makes fun of it all the time. Introduces himself as Haney the Egyptian terrorist and I promptly replied with, Josh, FBI agent. We both cracked up and that's how we became friends. He was my closest friend through college and, 9 years later, is still among my best friends. I'd trust the terrorist with my life. Went up to a girl at a bar and started talking to her. Things were going pretty well by traditional standards. But she kept talking, and then it started getting weird. Stripper, abusive exes, criminal past. I'm a pretty straight-laced dude when it come to relationships and started to inch my way away from her. Started talk to a male friend she had in her group and we totally hit it off as brothers. We swapped information and kept in touch. He's actually my roommate now and it's pretty chill. When we left the bar that night, the wing girl I went with just facepalmed and called me hopeless. Second day of high school, I showed up really stoned. I walked into my first hour ceramics class 30 seconds later, but I was the last person in the class and the closest seat was in the back of the classroom. So I sit across from this guy and this girl. I say hi to the girl and I turn to the guy and we just stare at each other for at least 30 seconds to a minute. And then the girl asks if either of us are going to say anything. We laugh and introduce ourselves and we've been friends for 5 years now. While on Instagram, I was pursuing the hashtag for the city I was living in and found a girl with a photo about moving, and so I commented on what a rad town it is and to message me if she needed any help. We followed each other and she stayed with me a week later when she visited. Instant friends were we. It was and still is awkward when people ask how we met and we say, oh you know, just on it. I watched her recreate an epic love poem using sock puppets for an advanced lit class. I laughed until I cried and decided this was a friendship worth pursuing. Instincts were right. She's delightful and like a sister to me. And she introduced me to her brother. He's the love of my life and sleeping next to me as I tappity away on Reddit. So that's my creepy story about how puppets touched me deep inside. Maybe a little late to post, but during my freshman year at university my roommate drunkenly woke up in the middle of the night. She fell out of bed and I helped her up and sat her on my bed to gather herself. By the time I had tucked her back and I noticed that she had peed in my bed. All of my friends had also been drinking and were passed out, so I wandered down the hall and stayed with the one girl who hadn't partied with us. I didn't know her that well, but she welcomed me into her room and she helped me laugh about the whole situation. Both girls ironically are my two best friends to this day. Showed a girl my butt tattoo. 2 hours later had three-way. 4 years later married to her with 2 kids. Well, that escalated quickly. Me in kindergarten saw a redhead kid. For some reason, my young mind made the connection he has red-orange hair. I'll call him Pighead. So I called him Pighead. Seriously, I still have no clue why. Then our moms became friends, so she took me to his house to play while our moms talked. Apparently he had told his mom about me, the kid who calls him Pighead. But when I got to his house, I saw that he had Pokemon Yellow for his Game Boy. I helped him beat Brock without using a Mankey, all by grinding up Pikachu and Pidgey and Caterpie until they were like level 20 each, and we became instant best friends. And now he's my roommate in college. We both were late for class test. In test he was worried if he would complete it in time or not. I let him cheat, and later on slowly, we became best friend. We met at dinner with mutual friends at a very fancy Italian restaurant. First thing I hear him say is when he was asking the waiter about the PBF he saw on the menu. He was then sincerely disappointed to learn it wasn't peanut butter and fluff. Been 2 years and one of my best friends ever since. I, with this one boy, helped to write a booklet on 7 ways to kill me. I helped generate ideas, and I helped him draw. We were sent to the office after another boy reported us because of the book, and we stayed in touch ever since it happened. Rut. Middle school history class. Kid sitting next to me wipes a booger on my desk, so I flick it at him and it hits and sticks on his tooth. Best friends for 15 years and counting. When I was like 10, a new kid moved into my neighborhood. A couple of my friends knew him from their church and said he was an butthole, and apparently he'd punched my friend after Sunday school. But before the parents got out of the service, I was a big kid, as was this new guy, so my friends said I should beat him up to get back for punching my friend. This was all they talked about for days, and they stroked my ego by saying I was the only one who could beat him up. So they invited him over to play football with us. The plan was for us to get into the game and then have me hit him, and they'd come punch him when I had him down. We were playing, and something wasn't right. He really didn't seem like a jerk. My friends gave the signal and I started yelling at him, asking why he punched my friend at church. He was like, WTF. So I punched his arm. He turned to me and threw the weakest jelliest punch at me. Then he tried to kick me. Again, it was like he'd never kicked anyone in his life. Uncoordinated and unforceful. I realized that this kid never punched anyone, but both our emotions were high. Not knowing what to do, I wanted to de-escalate the situation at this point. I just busted out laughing. He started laughing. My friends got mad I wasn't fighting him. I said we should just keep playing the game, but my friends were all sulky and literally took their ball and went home. It was still early, so me and the supposed bully went back to my house to shoot hoops. He opened up about how my friends were buttholes to him at church. I had no trouble believing him. From that day on, I hung out with the bully and didn't seek out the company of my friends anymore. I'd like to say we went on to become BFFs, but that's what happens in movies. His family moved out of state less than a year after this and I didn't talk to him again. Looking back as an adult, he was effeminate and possibly gay, which is why I think my friends bullied him. It was an important lesson I learned, to judge people for myself and not listen to other people or their views on someone. I accidentally farted in gym class, and she made fun of me. We've been inseparable ever since. 13 years. She bit my dog, Tootsie Roll, because she assumed he would taste like candy. I punched her and our parents made us play together. Back when I was in primary school, I got in a fight with a kid. He had me in a headlock and I picked him up and started slamming him into a pole. A teacher came over and started yelling at us. He claimed we were friends and would just play fighting, so I ran with it. I think somehow we even convinced ourselves, because from then on we were friends. I met my best friend when we were 6 months old, when our parents noticed we had the same stroller at a restaurant. 18 years later and still going strong. Someone hacked my computer remotely and was using a keylogger to see what I was up to, and sending dialogue boxes to taunt me and make me think some terrible virus was about to wreck my crap. When I realized it was a person, I started talking to him by just typing into Notepad, and he'd respond with the dialogues. We exchanged social media handles 12 years ago and I still text him 5 days out of the week. You have been visited by the Good Sleep Pizza. You will be blessed with cozy sleeps, but only if you upvote before going to sleep. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day, you magnificent people.